Welcome, everybody, to the Retail Corner podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with Christine Kostyrka, and I'm very excited about this conversation because, as everybody knows, I'm a huge art fanatic, and she's the director of retail at the Philadelphia Museum. How are you doing today, Christine?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Carlos?
Oh, I'm doing phenomenal. Having another great week. It's coming to an end, but happy for the weekend. So, you got any
Good.
exciting plans?
Just hoping that we're gonna get lots of people in the museum. I'm actually um, I'm actually going up to a trade show in the Catskills this weekend. It's called
Oh,
Field and
nice.
Supply, and checking out some potential new vendors. So never not working is what I always say.
Awesome. That's phenomenal. Hey,
Yeah,
so Christine, before we really get into it, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your background, right? How you got into the museum retail? I think most people, when
sure.
they think retail, they never really think about museums, right? You really think about, your typical brick and mortar locations and your clothing brands. But museums are a huge part of retail, right? And the gift shops and everything that happens behind the scenes and the after effect of going through a museum and looking at all the exhibits and the expositions and how people connect to that emotionally and how that translates into the actual purchase of retail merchandise to take that emotion as a souvenir back home, right? And so
Yeah.
how did all that career start for you? How did you end up where you are today?
But it actually started with art. Even though I've spent 30 years working, for profit retailers, I went to art school. I went to art school in New York City, and I thought that I was going to be painting. I studied fine art and art education. So my intention was to be, painting and then teaching a little bit on the side. And when I graduated, it was really hard finding a job in the arts in New York. A lot of things were being cut. A lot of programs for art and music were being cut at that time due to budgetary reasons. And I was given the opportunity to open up a store.
Oh,
Actually, I
wow.
was 22. My parents, about 6 months after I graduated, they retired and moved to Atlanta. So I was sort of like, okay, what am I going to do next? I've got my BFA, and I didn't know anything about retail, but I knew that there were similarities in terms of the idea of curation, and I really was always very interested in that. One of the last things I got to do at SVA for my senior class was to choose my classmates who would be getting an exhibition. And so in a way I was sort of curating the exhibitions for, my peers. And,
Mm-hmm.
was always kind of interested in that sort of an idea. And so I really feet to fire kind of figured it out. I opened up this small store. It was about, I guess, about 1,000 square feet, maybe a little less, just outside of New York City. And I went to my first trade show, and I had to figure out what everything meant. I mean, I didn't have a business background, far from it. I don't think I ever took a math class in art school. And but anyway, that's kind of how I got started. I just sort of figured things out very organically, and figured that I really grew to love the idea of retail and commerce, and especially storytelling and marketing and working with vendors. And it really just kind of checked all the boxes of things that made me you know but gave me a lot of happiness. And you got to really love what you do. So I figured, turn the wheel, and 30 something years later, this is still what I'm doing. So
Oh,
um
that's phenomenal. That sounds
yeah.
great. And I think in a lot of ways, right? Retail, I don't think people really think about it from this perspective, but you just mentioned something that is so true, right? It's about storytelling. And I think
Yeah.
nowadays, more than ever before, retail has been demanded to become a storytelling condition, right? Because
So true.
consumers want to connect with the merchandise they're purchasing. And I think in a way, it's now becoming a form of art because you have to tell that story without words, right? You have to tell that story at your store without
Yeah.
you being physically present and explaining anything to the consumer and really allowing the way you're portraying the merchandise to tell that story and to make that connection with a potential consumer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, some of the brands that I'm most interested in and find most inspiring do a great job of that. And I've actually been really fortunate, after I closed my store, to work for many of them. I went on to work for what was called then the Land of Nod, which is now called Crate& Kids. It's Crate and Barrel's children's company. I did
Mm-hmm.
all of their product development and buying for hard goods, and just an incredible opportunity to work for a brand that was, really based upon whimsy and telling the stories about how the products were, what they were inspired from and by. We did a lot of our product development from vintage. So we would go to, thrift stores and flea markets and things and find kind of vintage things and give them a new life. And then I went on to work for Martha Stewart, and nobody really was a better storyteller than she was at the
Hmm.
time, and even now, and then Urban Outfitters. So I've worked for some brands that really value the importance of storytelling in merchandising and recognize how important the marketing and merchandising are, really walking, in step.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talking about storytelling, right? Tell us a little bit more about. I know museums they rotate exhibitions, right? And they're constantly moving, making changes, right, in order to get
Yeah.
guests to come back in the doors, right? So how does that penetrate or impact the retail aspect of the area of the museum?
Well, I mean, it's a tried and true method. Obviously, the exit through the gift store. It isn't always successful. I'll tell you, there are some exhibitions that are really hard to merchandise. Either we can't get the licensing that happened with, we had a major exhibition a couple of years ago, was Jasper Johns retrospective in conjunction with the Whitney. And, of course, would love to have, had the opportunity to work with his artwork. And he really wasn't interested. So sometimes, you're kind of at the mercy of what you have to work with. But in the cases
Hmm.
where it does work really well, like for example, last year at this time, we were just about to open a Matisse exhibition. It was Matisse in the 1930s, and it was a really beautifully curated exhibition. And we created a store that was sort of an extension of the exhibition. We did a lot of research with the curator, and we actually created a space that looked like his studio. We looked at a lot of photographs of where he worked, down to the wallpaper that we chose for
Wow.
the walls, the music that we played. He was a huge collector of textiles, all types of textiles. And so we had those hanging. And, there was a lot of correlation back to the items in the store. One of my favorite ones, I think, was we worked with a milliner based in Brooklyn called Begtazo, and she took images of women wearing hats. There were a lot of portraits of women in Paris wearing these lovely cloches from the 30s and other types of hats too. And she recreated the hats based on the hats that the women in the paintings were wearing. And
Wow.
that was just an amazing opportunity for people to kind of, experience that moment of like exiting the exhibition and then being able to try on a hat that was very similar to a hat that was, just in the painting that they saw. So that was a really, really fun exhibition to curate. And beyond storytelling, I would say for museum exhibitions, it's really about education, So, we talked a lot about, the reasons why we made some of the decisions we did, and we trained our sales staff to also be thinking that way and our buyers to be thinking that way so that everybody that walked in there sort of got it. We had a lot of
Mhm.
signage explaining why, there were, for example, Suzani textiles hanging, and the reason why we made some of those decisions were based on, Matisse and how he lived, what his studio was like back then. So, and that was a really, really fun opportunity. And we like to think about the stores in general, not just the exhibition stores, as an extension of the galleries.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, a lot different challenges come, right? When it comes with the retail, the gift shop, right? Museum experience
Mm.
versus your typical brick and mortar retail,
Yeah.
right? And what are some of those challenges that you guys experience in comparison to the typical retail?
Yeah, well, for one thing, we're serving a lot of different people. I mean, everybody. It's a public institution, so unlike going
Mhm.
to a brand or buying for a brand, there's not really a singular focus. That was really something that we thought a lot about when we opened up our new stores. I should mention that when I started in February of 2019, the museum was just about to open 90,000 square feet of space, along with Frank Geary, who was the architect for the program for the project, and he planned three brand new stores. And so
Wow.
we had this really unique opportunity to start completely fresh. And so we had to really give a lot of thought to what does it mean to be not only to be a museum store, but to be a museum store in this institution in the city of Philadelphia. And so I would think, coming up with a point of view, I wouldn't necessarily call it a challenge in as much as maybe an opportunity to kind of just
Mm.
come up with an identity. Yes, we do sell postcards with images from the collection, and we sell, pins and posters and, lots of other types of traditional souvenir merchandise, but we also have an opportunity to think about what we can do from a local perspective. And so we brought in the work of, when we opened up the first store, the work of about 20 local artisans. Philadelphia has a really vibrant, thriving maker community, and we've met so many incredible makers. And that number has grown now to over 100. And it's been really our favorite part of the stores has been working with local makers and really, giving them an opportunity to work with the museum and work with the collection for inspiration.
Wow. And when it comes, obviously, right, talking about local artists and talking about putting that influence, and as you very well mentioned, right, you guys don't have a specific target market audience because everybody comes in, right, from kids to grandpa to mom and dad. Using digital platforms, right, obviously they have become
Mhm.
very, very important for every aspect of retails. Are you guys leveraging that, or is that still something that it's coming up in the future? How is the leveraging of the digital platforms from the museum perspective?
Yeah, well, so after we opened up that store, which was September of 2019, 6 months later, everything shut down. And
Mm-hmm,
so we were
mm-hmm,
getting ready to open up the two additional stores, and we had to really come to a standstill because of COVID. But it gave us the opportunity to rethink our digital platform, to launch an Instagram feed, also to launch a brand new website. Our website was really antiquated. It was difficult to work with. Everything had to be programmed. We chose an out of the box solution. We work with BigCommerce. We've been really happy with that
mm-hmm,
relationship, and great customer service, and just kind of easy to populate. And so our biggest opportunity, I guess, or the biggest challenge and opportunity. The challenge, of course, is you can't always dictate who's coming in the door. If the weather prevents people from traveling, or there's a pandemic, and we were closed for quite a while, or maybe it's an exhibition that's not as popular as a Matisse exhibition, and maybe people aren't really aware, or it's not driving the attendance in that way. We have an opportunity to obviously control what we have on our digital platform, on our website. And so, we started selling products that would appeal to people who maybe have never even been in the museum or even in Philadelphia before.
mm-hmm,
We ship products actually all over the world. And that's really been eye-opening just in terms of, that type of thinking. So, on one end of the spectrum, you have a very much brick and mortar, of the moment experience where you have to be, in the exhibition shop in order to experience retail. And then the other end of the spectrum, you have, somebody who, again, maybe has never even been to the museum or to the city and is really just looking at you as a great, store. And,
mm-hmm.
looking at the assortment. So, we also do think about that difference of customer. Like, yes, it is very broad, but we do try to have something for the people who just really want a souvenir of the museum or the city. And then there's also people who walk in the doors or log on and look at our website and expect to find something because we're a museum store that they've never seen before. There's a different standard, I think. That they're expecting to kind of be wowed. And,
Mm-hmm,
that's
mm-hmm.
how we sort of have challenged ourselves, is in really using that filter and thinking about those surprise and delight moments. They're so important.
Absolutely. And with that, I'm sure as you guys are always looking for unique merchandise and of course, unique experiences within the museum, things are ever continuously changing, right? And I think the past 5 years, they have been tremendous change for everybody within the
Yeah.
retail industry, right? Where do you think those big changes are driving, the retail museum experience? Do what do you guys foresee coming in the future that you think is going to be an opportunity?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can just speak to this institution. I mean, we've put a lot of focus, rightfully so, as have a lot of institutions over the past few years, on serving the community,
Mm-hmm.
not just protecting the collection. And so, making sure that we have diversity in terms of the vendors that we work with, in terms of those local artists that we represent. One of my favorite collaborations is Center for Creative Works. They're a group of neurodiverse artists based in Philadelphia, and their work is phenomenal. And they show in galleries all over the country. And they're working with us to produce some holiday products, which we're really excited about. We've worked with other nonprofits in the city where, we give back a percentage, even though we ourselves are a nonprofit. We feel an obligation to support other nonprofits in their mission as well. And, it's that kind of idea. Yes, it's storytelling, but for me, I think it's also really essential. There's a feel good aspect to it. I think we all are working in a museum because, not only is it a pleasurable experience to be around such beautiful art, but also we really take seriously the idea of serving the public, educating the public, providing an experience for the public. And for me, part of that is giving opportunity to a wide range of vendors. And so that has been, definitely a big focus and will continue to be a focus for us. I would say the other thing that I'm really excited about, and you can kind of see a little bit of it behind me, is the
Mm-hmm.
idea of, print on demand. I think one of the challenges coming from a big company like an Urban Outfitters, where we were literally buying container loads of merchandise to a museum, where obviously the turn is not quite as quick, and our
Mm-hmm.
inventory needs are not as needing to be as deep. Is this idea of printing on demand? Obviously, not a new idea in retail, but definitely something that is just starting to be thought of in the museum space. So we already have a program that's an art on demand program where we ship, prints and framed work. We have about 400 works in our collections. People can go on our website and order it, and they're actually printed on demand in Austin. But we're just about to launch our very first collab and licensing opportunity with this a wonderful company that I have worked with in the past called Cloth & Co. They're based just out of Chicago, and they manufacture furniture on demand. They have wide scale digital printers. And so they can take any image. And of course, we have nothing but images,
Mm-hmm.
270,000 objects in our collection. And they can, size them accordingly, and they can print upholstery fabric on demand. So what you're seeing behind you is our first collaboration with it's 5 women from Cheese Bend, Alabama. They're quilt makers, very well known. And so we're working with their estates to license the rights to use the designs on furniture. And so we're going to launch
Wow.
this both on our website, and they are launching it in 2 weeks at High Point, the High Point
Wow.
Furniture Market. And so this is terribly exciting for me. I feel like from a museum perspective, certainly licensing is something that's very common, again, in traditional retail, but for the museum world, really just larger museums have done this. And I think it's really an opportunity that hopefully will spread. And I feel like it's an opportunity, on both sides. There's the halo effect of brands working with museums, and there's certainly the opportunity for museums to work with different brands who can maybe help, carry the weight of some of the higher minimums that come with projects like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're talking about obviously about copywriting and licensing, right? Obviously something that you
Yeah.
probably deal with a lot for every single product that you want to put out there.
Yeah.
So what are some of the processes that you guys go through when you do that, right? Does it really limit your ability to have merchandise at the right time at the right place because
Yeah.
you're negotiating all those things and that time period can be much longer than you would like?
Yeah.
Or or how do you guys leverage all of that?
I mean, we definitely have to factor that into our timeline because,
Mm,
as the example that I gave you before with Jasper Johns, there really wasn't an opportunity, and so we had to kind of think about what might some other objects be, what other products could we potentially put, in a small way, like a little pop up in a gift store. But it does limit it, I guess, in the sense that we can't always license what we would like to license.
mm,
There are limitations regarding what we can do and the use of it. We've been very fortunate, though, in having some wonderful relationships with some very important artists' estates. Duchamp is one of them. We have the largest collection of Duchamp's work in the United States, and it's really what part of what this institution is known for. And we've worked with them directly. I've actually traveled to their offices in Paris and pitched them on some ideas, and they've pitched some ideas directly to us. And we launched a collaboration with Blackwing Pencils, actually, and Duchamp celebrating. It was actually this past month was the 50th anniversary of a major retrospective of Duchamp's work at the museum. And so we launched this really wonderful box of pencils that has the names of titles of each of his works embedded in each of the pencils. And then it comes with a little mini surprise poster that was a replica of the 1973 exhibition poster.
Wow.
So, yeah, we've been able to do some fun things. It isn't always possible. We can't always do everything that we'd like to do. But, my hope is that we're going to get lots more opportunities to license both with artists as well as with other brands. We have some ideas kind of cooking that we're pretty excited about. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, that sounds phenomenal. I think when those things finalize cooking, please make sure to reach out to us. We'd love to share with our audience. That sounds
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I always like to ask this last question for everybody,
Sure.
right? And it is, if you had one piece of advice, right, for everybody as they're embarking in their careers, or maybe they're going through a career change, right? Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of professionals and executives that listen to our podcast. What would be your one piece of advice that you would like to share with them after your journey so far?
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one for me. One of the things I've been fortunate to do over the past year is to teach. I'm an adjunct professor at Drexel University at Westfall College of Media and Design, and just started up again last week teaching retail ops. And the
Nice.
very first thing, the very first day of class, I tell every student that I've worked with is to stay curious. And that's something that has always served me my whole life. I mean, and I also tell them, once you're in this business, you really don't ever shut it off. Like, kind of not kidding when I'm saying, like, I'm always working. I'm never not working. Your antenna is always up. Even if you're going to get something to eat, you're always looking at, the signage, the merchandising, it doesn't matter where you are. Shopping is an integral part of our lives. And because we do this for a living, it's just always around us. But, the idea of just staying curious and always learning is something that has really served me well, and certainly has served me well in working in, one of the world's best art museums, to be surrounded by not only all of this beautiful art, but also, the history and the learning. I have such incredible colleagues, and they've been so supportive of the work that I do. So, very collaborative with curators in the way that I might have been in a past life with a creative director. And so, that type of learning is really serving me well. But yes, that is the one piece of advice that I would always give, no matter what context you're in, stay curious, always be learning, and to take a little bit of risk too. I guess that would be part of that sentiment.
No, I think it's phenomenal. I really like a phrase that I think goes with what you're saying. If you every day you learn something new, then it's not a wasted day. You
Yeah.
know, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, always stay curious and always try to learn something new, because even
Yeah.
through our entire lifespan, we will never finish learning. And
Yeah.
really discovering new things. So
It's so
thank you
true.
so much, Christine, for your time. We greatly appreciate it. It sounds so exciting what you guys are doing, and the fact that you're looking to collaborate with retail companies, and I think that sounds phenomenal. I think that's a great opportunity. And for everybody listening to our podcast, guys, if you're in Philadelphia at any time, go visit the museum, and also check out their website. They're making things change so that you can take a piece of art and a piece of the Philadelphia Museum to your home.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Christine. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
If you would like to be featured on our podcast, please email us at podcast@retailcorner.live or visit our website, retailcorner.live. Looking forward to having you as our guest on our podcast, and thank you so much for listening.